let's talk about something that every woman, at some point, has felt in her gut, but couldn't quite explain. One moment, he's completely present, texting you first, making plans, telling you how amazing you are, and then suddenly he's gone quiet. You start wondering what happened. Did I do something wrong? This is one of the most common emotional mysteries in modern dating, and today, we're going to break it down together. If you've been searching for relationship advice for women, craving dating tips for women that actually make sense, and wanting to understand why men pull away, you are in the right place. Because this isn't just about figuring out how to make him miss you. It's about stepping into your power. It's about female empowerment in relationships, learning how to stop chasing men, mastering the art of understanding men, and reconnecting with your self-love and confidence. Whether you're healing from a toxic relationship recovery or working toward a high-value woman mindset, this conversation will open your eyes and change how you respond forever. When a man starts to pull away, the first instinct that hits you is panic. It's that sinking, stomach-twisting feeling that whispers, something's wrong. You start replaying every conversation, every text, every little thing you said. You start asking yourself questions that have no satisfying answers. Was I too much? Too emotional? Too distant? Did I say something stupid? You go into detective mode, analyzing every detail like you can somehow piece together the moment he changed his mind. But here's the truth. You didn't do something wrong. What you're feeling isn't rejection. It's confusion mixed with fear. It's the uncertainty that comes when someone who once made you feel safe suddenly makes you feel invisible. Here's what you have to understand. Emotional connection doesn't always move in a straight line. Men and women experience closeness in completely different rhythms. For many women, the more emotionally connected you feel, the safer you become. You open up more, you lean in more, you love deeper. But for many men, the closer they get, the more vulnerable they feel. And that vulnerability can feel like a threat. It's not about you. It's about their internal wiring. When they feel emotions rising, when they sense intensity building, something inside them panics. They pull away not because they don't care, but because they need to recalibrate. It's like standing in the ocean. You move closer together, the tide rises, emotions peak, and then, instinctively, he steps back to catch his breath. The problem is, when he steps back, your emotions rush forward. You start chasing the tide that's pulling away. You send that just checking in text. You try to re-engage. You attempt to fix something that might not even be broken. You think if you just show him how much you care, he'll come back faster. But love doesn't work like that. Every time you chase, you send the message that your emotional balance depends on his attention. You teach him that your peace disappears when he does. And that right there is where the power dynamic flips. What most women don't realize is that your reaction during his withdrawal defines everything. If you can stay still when he pulls back, if you can breathe, ground yourself, and remind yourself that distance doesn't mean disinterest, you become the calm in the chaos. You communicate something so powerful, so magnetic, without saying a single word. I trust myself enough not to chase love out of fear. That kind of emotional maturity hits differently. It's not cold. It's confident. It's the quiet energy that says, I don't need to force connection to be worthy of it. And the truth is, when a man feels that, when he senses that your world doesn't crumble when he steps away, he feels safer to come back. This isn't about playing games or pretending not to care. It's about embodying emotional strength. The strength to stay soft but not desperate. The strength to hold space without losing yourself in it. When you can do that, something shifts, not just in the relationship, but inside you. You stop needing constant reassurance because you become your reassurance. You realize that your value doesn't shrink because someone needs space. You remember that love isn't about control. It's about trust, and trust starts with you. Now let's talk about what happens beneath that surface. Because when a man pulls away, it's not just emotional, it's psychological. Most men aren't raised to be comfortable with deep vulnerability. Society tells them to be strong, logical, unshakable. But emotional connection requires openness, and openness requires courage. So when a man starts feeling things he can't quite process, fear, affection, attachment, his nervous system registers that as overwhelm. His instinct isn't to talk about it, it's to retreat, to regain a sense of stability. That's why one day he's all in, And the next, it feels like you're talking to a stranger. But here's what's key. His withdrawal is not your invitation to fill the space. It's your opportunity to hold your center. The more you try to close that gap, the wider it gets. When you overtext, overthink, overanalyze, you send emotional noise into his silence. But if you can stay quiet, grounded, focused on your own life, that silence becomes a mirror. It forces him to notice your absence, to reflect, to process. Because what men often realize when they pull away is that peace feels emptier without your presence in it. But he can only feel that if you don't chase. This is where emotional intelligence becomes your superpower. When you resist the urge to react, you build trust with yourself. You teach yourself that discomfort doesn't need immediate fixing. You learn how to be okay without constant validation. That's what emotional independence looks like. It's the foundation of every strong relationship. When you can meet his withdrawal with patience, not panic, you set the tone for how you deserve to be treated. You show him that love isn't something he can take for granted, and you remind yourself that love should never make you lose yourself. Now, there's another layer to why men pull away, and it's about emotional overload. Sometimes it's not about fear of intimacy, it's about internal overwhelm. Men often don't have the same emotional outlets women do. They suppress, they compartmentalize, so when they finally connect deeply, it can feel like too much too fast. They don't know how to handle it. And instead of saying, I need a minute, they subconsciously create distance. They disappear into work, distractions, silence, because that's the only way they know to regulate themselves. And here's where you have a choice. You can take his silence personally and spiral into anxiety, or you can recognize it for what it is, an emotional regulation phase that has nothing to do with your worth. You can fill that space with fear, or you can fill it with self-love. You can check your phone every 5 minutes, or you can go live your damn life. Because when you stay in motion, when you keep showing up for you, you don't just maintain your power, you expand it. The worst thing you can do in that moment is chase him into clarity he's not ready for. The best thing you can do is stay steady, breathe, don't react. Don't internalize his withdrawal as your failure. Sometimes men need to step away to realize what they had. And when you give them the gift of space, without resentment, without manipulation, you give yourself the gift of peace. You remind yourself that you are not waiting to be chosen. You are already enough, exactly as you are. When you understand this rhythm, when you stop trying to swim against the tide, you start experiencing relationships from a place of calm confidence. You stop begging for consistency and start being consistent with yourself. That's when everything changes. Because the moment you stop chasing love out of fear of losing it, you start attracting it from a place of power. That's when you move from anxiety to alignment, from reaction to reflection, from losing yourself to finally being seen for who you truly are. Deep down, so many men aren't afraid of love. They're afraid of losing their freedom inside of it. That fear isn't always conscious. It's buried under layers of old programming, past experiences, and expectations about what being in a relationship means. For a lot of men, love begins to feel like surrendering control, like giving up a piece of themselves. They start to feel the weight of responsibility, the pressure to be everything, to provide, to protect, to perform. And somewhere inside that, they lose their sense of individuality. When that happens, their instinct is to pull back, not to leave, but to breathe. It's the psychological equivalent of needing to step outside for air when a room suddenly feels too tight. Here's the hard truth. When a man starts to pull away because he feels his freedom slipping, chasing him only confirms his fear. The more you push, the more he resists. The more you try to hold on, the more he associates closeness with confinement. What he actually needs in that moment isn't your reassurance. It's your trust. He needs to feel that he can step back and you won't fall apart. That he can take space and you won't make him the villain for needing it. When he feels that safety, when he realizes that love doesn't mean losing himself, that's when he starts to lean back in. But let's be honest. Letting him have that space feels like torture when you're emotionally invested. Every instinct in you screams, "Do something!" You want to reach out, fix it, make it make sense. You want certainty. You want to know what's happening and why it's suddenly different. And when you don't get that, it's easy to start spiraling, thinking maybe you're not enough, maybe you said too much, maybe he found someone else. But none of that helps you. None of that brings him closer. All it does is take you further away from your own power. You have to remind yourself that love built on pressure will always collapse. Love built on freedom, however, grows stronger. You don't have to convince someone to choose you. You just have to give them the space to realize they want to. There's a massive difference between being wanted and being needed out of fear. A man who feels free to choose you will show up far more powerfully than one who feels obligated to. So when he pulls away, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this space isn't rejection. It's a test of my self-trust. Can I stay calm enough to let him move through whatever he's processing? Can I keep showing up for myself in the meantime? Because when you can, that's when you embody true emotional strength. And here's the secret. When you stop chasing, he starts wondering. The same way you notice when he stops calling, he notices when you stop overextending. He feels the shift in your energy. He senses that you're no longer waiting for his next move, and that creates curiosity. It creates respect. Because you've just shown him something rare. A woman who loves deeply but doesn't lose herself in love. And that's magnetic. That's when he starts leaning back in. Not because you demanded it, but because your calmness reminded him what peace feels like. Now let's talk about something equally important, energy imbalance. Sometimes when a man pulls away, it's not about fear of freedom. It's about overinvestment. Your energy being so wrapped around him that he starts to feel smothered. It's not always intentional. It's subtle. It happens when you start building your emotional rhythm around his attention. You start checking your phone a little too often. You cancel your plans just in case he calls. You start adjusting your energy to match his availability. Without even realizing it, your life begins to orbit around his. That's when the imbalance starts. You're giving too much, hoping it'll bring him closer. But energetically, it does the opposite. The more you pour in without receiving in return, the heavier it feels for him, and the more drained it becomes for you. You start to feel resentful, anxious, unseen. You're trying harder while he's trying less. And somewhere along the way, you stop feeling like a partner and start feeling like a pursuer. That's not love. That's imbalance. Here's the truth most women don't want to admit. When you make a man your emotional priority before he's earned that position, you lose your leverage. Not manipulative leverage, emotional leverage, the kind that comes from self-respect. Because love isn't about giving everything and hoping it's enough. It's about balance, reciprocity, flow. You can't keep pouring from an empty cup. You can't be the only one nurturing connection and expect it to feel fulfilling. So when you notice yourself giving too much, stop. Pull your energy back with grace, not as punishment, but as self-preservation. Reinvest that energy into yourself. Go to the gym, see your friends, work on that project you've been putting off. When you start filling your own life again, two things happen. Your energy rises, and your value multiplies. Because nothing is more attractive than a woman who is busy building her life, not begging for attention. That's the energy of a high-value woman. It's the energy that says, I want connection, but I don't need it to feel whole. And here's the beautiful irony. When you pull your energy back, he feels it. That subtle shift creates space for him to step forward. The emotional load lifts. The pressure fades. Suddenly he can breathe again, and from that place of ease, connection becomes possible. He starts to miss your energy. Not the overgiving, anxious version of you, but the calm, radiant, grounded woman who knows her worth. That's the version of you that pulls him back in. But this is where you have to stay consistent. Because once he returns, the temptation is to overgive again, to dive right back into the emotional rhythm that created the imbalance in the first place. Don't. Stay balanced. Let him meet you halfway. Love isn't about giving until you're empty. It's about flowing together without losing your sense of self. Every time you hold your boundaries with love, you teach him how to value your energy. Every time you choose to nurture your own peace instead of forcing connection, you remind him that your love is something he has to rise up to meet. That's the secret most women miss. Not every withdrawal is rejection, and not every pause means the end. Sometimes, that space is the exact thing that helps you both reset. It's the breathing room that allows love to grow on stronger, more equal ground. When you can embrace that truth, you stop reacting from fear and start responding from strength. You stop chasing freedom out of him and start embodying it yourself. Because when you live from that place, when your happiness is not tied to his presence, you become unshakable. You become the kind of woman who doesn't just attract love, but inspires it. The kind of woman who reminds a man that love isn't supposed to be a cage. It's supposed to be a choice, And the moment it becomes that, everything about how he shows up begins to change. When a man starts to pull away, most women immediately jump to conclusions. They think something's wrong, that they did something to cause it, or that he's already half out the door. But the truth is, when he creates distance, it's not always rejection. It's information. It's communication without words. It's data about where he is emotionally, what he can handle, and what kind of connection he's capable of maintaining. You have to stop taking it personally and start seeing it for what it truly is: clarity in disguise. Every pause, every delay, every "I've just been busy" moment, it's not random. It's teaching you something about his emotional availability, his maturity, and his willingness to show up consistently. When a man pulls away, it's like life putting a spotlight on what's real versus what's ideal. You get to see his patterns, not just his potential. You get to observe how he handles discomfort, pressure, or intimacy. Does he communicate? Does he disappear? Does he come back and pretend nothing happened? That's the real test of who he is. And your job isn't to chase answers. It's to pay attention. Because when you start treating his withdrawal as feedback, not failure, you take your power back. You stop making his silence about your worth and start using it as a mirror for truth. The problem is, most of us were never taught to stay still in uncertainty. We were taught to fix, to please, to smooth over tension. So when he pulls away, your instinct is to fill the space. You text, you call, you try to reconnect because the silence feels unbearable. But what if instead of reacting, you took a step back and said, "Okay, this is interesting. What's this showing me?" Because that one question flips everything. It shifts you from emotional desperation to emotional intelligence. It helps you see that not every connection is meant to be saved. Some are meant to show you what you no longer need to tolerate. Every time a man distances himself, he's showing you something about his capacity for emotional responsibility. The question isn't, "Why is he doing this to me?" The real question is this behavior compatible with the kind of love I want? Because when you start seeing distance as data, you can make choices based on reality, not fantasy. You can stop holding on to potential and start honoring your standards. The version of you that keeps trying to chase clarity is stuck in fear. The version of you that can sit in uncertainty is stepping into power. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop reacting to his withdrawal, you immediately become more grounded, more centered, more magnetic. You stop leaking energy. You stop handing him emotional control. Because now, instead of waiting to see what he'll do, you're focused on what you're going to do. You're asking yourself, what do I want? What feels right for me? That's the energy of a woman who doesn't beg for connection. She chooses it. She doesn't plead for consistency. She expects it. That's where emotional power begins. Because your reaction to his distance reveals more about your self-worth than his withdrawal ever could. When you can meet silence with stillness, when you can stay grounded instead of panicking, you become emotionally untouchable. You stop giving away your power through reactivity. You stop needing his reassurance to feel secure. That kind of emotional control doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself just as much as you care about him. And that's the difference between attachment and alignment. Let's talk about that control, because it's everything. The power of non-reactivity is something most people underestimate. You think strength is in the comeback, in the perfect text, in making him realize what he's losing. But strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the silence between your thoughts. It's that moment when you want to send the paragraph, but instead, you close your phone and remind yourself, if he wanted to talk, he would. That's power. That's emotional discipline. That's the kind of energy that changes everything. When you can stop yourself from reacting impulsively, you stop feeding the emotional roller coaster. You step out of chaos and into clarity. Because here's the thing, reactivity always comes from fear. You're afraid of losing him, of not being chosen, of being abandoned. But when you realize that your peace is more important than your fear, you begin to choose differently. You stop trying to control how he feels and start focusing on how you feel. You stop trying to fix his silence and start protecting your energy. That's when you go from chasing to attracting. Grace under pressure is one of the most magnetic qualities a woman can have. When he pulls away and you stay calm, when you don't crumble, when you don't explode, you communicate something that words can't. You send the message that you're not easily shaken, that your worth doesn't depend on his behavior. And that kind of energy, it's rare, it's grounding. It makes people take notice because you've just shown that you're not afraid of space. You're not begging for closure. You're not performing to keep love. You're simply existing in your truth. Non-reactivity doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've learned the difference between caring and controlling. You can care deeply and still stay detached from the outcome. You can love fully and still know when to step back. That balance, that's mastery. That's emotional intelligence in action. Because it's not about pretending you're unbothered. It's about being so rooted in your self-worth that you don't have to prove anything. When you reach that point, something magical happens. You stop trying to make someone love you, and you start letting love reveal itself. You give people the space to show you who they really are. You learn that silence isn't the enemy. It's a filter. It filters out the ones who aren't aligned with your energy. It reveals who's capable of showing up and who's just passing time. And through it all, you stay steady. You keep your peace intact. You keep your boundaries firm. Because you've realized that emotional maturity is not about winning. It's about choosing peace over chaos. Every time you choose calm over panic, you build emotional muscle. You're training yourself to trust your inner stability more than external validation. That's what makes you unshakable. That's what makes you magnetic. Because real confidence isn't about never feeling fear. It's about feeling it and not letting it run your life. When you stay calm while someone else pulls away, you're showing that your happiness isn't up for negotiation. That's the energy of a woman who knows her worth. That's the kind of energy that doesn't just make a man miss you. It makes you remember who you are. Men mirror the energy you live in. They don't always listen to your words, but they feel your energy like a pulse. If you love yourself halfway, they show up halfway. If you tolerate inconsistency, they give you inconsistency. If you abandon yourself emotionally to keep them happy, they subconsciously learn that your love requires no effort. That's the mirror effect. Every time you ignore your needs, every time you shrink yourself to avoid conflict, you're teaching him how to treat you. You're showing him that you'll overextend, that you'll stay, that you'll carry the weight even when he drops it. But when you flip that pattern, when you finally start loving yourself like you expect to be loved, everything changes. Self-love isn't bubble baths and mantras, it's boundaries. It's the quiet moment where you say, "No, I'm not doing this anymore." It's walking away from what hurts even when you still care. It's refusing to beg for love because you finally realize that you deserve it freely. When you start showing up for yourself, your energy shifts. You stop chasing validation and start radiating confidence. And men feel that shift instantly. The same energy that once overgave starts to pull back into alignment. You stop saying yes to things that drain you. You stop explaining your worth. And you start attracting people who rise to meet your standards instead of you lowering them. You have to remember that people learn from your energy more than your explanations. You can't say, "I want respect," while tolerating disrespect. You can't say, "I want consistency," while rewarding inconsistency. Your energy teaches louder than your words ever will. So if you're tired of being taken for granted, stop giving your peace away in exchange for potential. Stop waiting for someone to realize your value. Realize it yourself. Because the moment you truly love yourself, your entire vibration changes. And that's when you stop attracting projects and start attracting partners. Self-love is about clarity. It's about knowing that you are worthy of healthy love, even when someone else can't give it. It's about refusing to shrink just to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Because here's the thing. When you love yourself deeply, you stop trying to convince people to see your worth. You let them. Or you let them go. You stop auditioning for love. You stop performing. You start living like the prize you already are. That's the high-value woman mindset people talk about. Not arrogance, but peace. The peace that comes when you finally decide that you'd rather be alone in truth than attached in illusion. And when you stand in that energy, you become magnetic. Because confidence isn't loud. It's quiet, grounded, unbothered. It's in the way you carry yourself. It's in your silence when others expect you to chase. It's in your calmness when they try to test your boundaries. When you can stand in your worth, a man feels that. He either rises to meet you or drifts away. And both outcomes are a win, because you didn't have to lose yourself to find love. That's the power of self-love. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you attract. It changes you. Now let's talk about how you respond when he pulls away, because that's where grace turns into power. When a man withdraws, most women panic. They think, "What should I do?" But the truth is, you don't need to do anything. You need to be. You need to embody grace, because grace doesn't chase, it observes. Grace doesn't beg, it breathes. Grace doesn't demand explanations. It allows actions to speak. When he pulls away, you don't need to match his silence with resentment or fill it with noise. You simply stay steady in who you are. You let him feel the space. You let him experience what it's like not to have your energy on demand. Graceful detachment is not indifference, it's wisdom. It's knowing that love doesn't have to be forced. It's trusting that the right connection doesn't need chasing. When you stop trying to convince someone to stay, you make space for someone who wants to. That's the beauty of responding gracefully. You're not trying to prove your worth. You're simply refusing to beg for what should be freely given. You're not punishing anyone. You're protecting your peace. You're showing emotional maturity that says, I can love you and still walk away if this stops honoring me. Responding gracefully doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to not lose your center when someone else loses theirs. It's choosing peace over panic, self-respect over impulse, and presence over reaction. Because when you meet distance with dignity, you radiate power. You're not trying to control his response. You're mastering your own. That's strength. That's what draws a man back with genuine admiration, not pity or guilt. Because people don't come back for those who chase. They come back for those who glow. When you hold yourself with grace during uncertainty, you build unshakable trust with yourself. You learn that no matter what someone else does, you'll be okay. That's emotional independence. It's the knowing that your world doesn't crumble because one person took a step back. It's the realization that space isn't something to fear. It's something to use. Space allows you to reflect, to realign, to grow. It gives you the opportunity to look inward and ask, what did I learn about myself here? What pattern am I ready to break? Because that's where transformation begins, in stillness, not reaction. So when he pulls away, stop trying to rewrite his story. Write yours. Fill your space with things that feed your soul. Reconnect with your goals, your body, your joy. Remind yourself what it feels like to be whole without anyone else filling the gaps. Because the truth is, the more you love your life, the less you tolerate people who make you question your worth. When you reach that point, your response to distance becomes simple. You stop chasing closure. You stop begging for answers. You simply observe and decide. You know that his actions are telling you everything you need to know, and that you have the strength to act accordingly. Graceful response is emotional leadership. It's being the anchor in your own storm. It's understanding that maturity isn't found in control. It's found in calm. It's the difference between reacting to pain and responding to truth. When you live from that energy, you attract relationships that match it. Stable, respectful, grounded. You stop engaging in emotional tug-of-war because you've outgrown the need to prove your worth. You're no longer chasing love. You're embodying it. That's what responding gracefully really means. It's not weakness. It's power disguised as peace. It's the quiet confidence that says, I can love you and still choose me. It's the awareness that love should never require you to abandon yourself. And when you start living from that place, life begins to reflect it back to you. People show up differently. You attract deeper connections. You radiate peace. Because you finally understood that love doesn't start with them. It starts with how you treat yourself. So if you've ever asked yourself, why did he pull away? And I want you to remember this. It's not always about you losing him. It's about you finding yourself again. Every time you choose peace over panic, boundaries over begging, and self-worth over fear, you step deeper into your power as a woman. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced this emotional pullback? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one because these conversations matter. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe for more deep, empowering conversations about love, healing, and personal growth. And before you go, tell me what topic you want me to dive into next. Whether it's emotional detachment, rebuilding confidence, or decoding male psychology, I'm here for it. Together we'll keep building not just stronger relationships, but stronger women.